Hello. Welcome back. I'm Professor Chris McCusker. Welcome to the Quarantine Management Institute, and we're going to do another episode. At the Quarantine Management Institute, our motto is learning to learn in new ways together. So, let's go ahead and start. I'd like to start off by sharing with you a pun. Here's the pun. Well, first of all, here's the setup. Go to a ranch called Focus. Here comes the pun. Their sons raised meat. Ooh, I shouldn't have showed you. Look, their sons raised meat. Now notice two things. Go to a ranch called Focus. Their sons raised meat. One set of noises. Their sons raised meat. Two very different meanings. In the one case, it's our star and the rays from the sun are meeting, coming together. In the other case, it's on a ranch. Their sons, the offspring, are raising meat like cattle or pig or something. One set of sounds, their sons raise meat, two very different interpretations. That issue is an important issue when it comes to the topic of this episode, which is perception. The issue is called equivocality, which was analyzed and made famous in a book called The Social Psychology of Organizing by a social psychologist, Carl Weick. Equivocality means one and the same thing can have different interpretations. The information allows for multiple interpretation. Let me give you another famous example. And this is an example that was made famous by a German philosopher by the name of Ludwig von Wittgenstein. And Wittgenstein studied language and meaning and different philosophies related to those subjects. Oh, it's loading up. So let me. Oh, here we go. Let me do this. I don't know why I just had to reboot at this terrible moment. Bad timing, computer. Nonetheless, here we go. I'm going to show you this. It's a very famous image called the duck-rabbit illusion, made famous by Ludwig von Wittgenstein, the German philosopher. Notice that if you're looking in one direction, it looks like a rabbit. If you're looking the other direction, it looks like a duck. Now, I have some relatives who live in the country, and they do a lot of hunting and fishing and such. And they said, Professor, why don't you teach us something? And I showed them this image, and I said, what is it? A duck or a rabbit? And they said, we don't care what it is. We're going to shoot it and eat it. But a lot of times it does matter. It matters what it is. I think of a lot of things I've been watching in this epidemic, this COVID-19 coronavirus epidemic. And right now, the biggest, probably most important duck-rabbit image in the world will be this guy. The 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. We're going to talk about leading in crisis. We're going to talk about experiences that I've had in different crisis situations, different people whom I've interviewed or learned from who are leaders in crisis. And right now, we're dealing with a very difficult situation for all of us, including President Trump. But what I've noticed when you turn on the media, various modes of learning about what's happening, there seems to be a lot of interpretations going on about President Trump. If you're a red person, you look at that red duck, and you say, well, he's doing the best he can. He's doing a good job. He's communicating every day. The information has changed. So what he said on February 27th was different from what he said on March 15th because changing information, etc. If you're looking at a blue rabbit, you say, well, he is only worried about getting reelected, and people dying is not as important as getting reelected. So I mean, it's just really hard for me to watch because I assume that someone in his shoes is really trying to do a good job. But my point is really about the nature of information itself. This duck rabbit image, President Trump, allows for multiple interpretation. That is called equivocality. So when it comes to human perception, the thing we have to remember at the start of the conversation is that information is equivocal. Information allows for multiple interpretation. Years ago, I listened to a very interesting analysis of a topic which is known as naive realism. Professor Rob Robinson, who taught at the Harvard Business School, presented about this issue and pointed out that it's been long known that when we perceive something, we don't make a sufficient allowance for our own subjectivity. We make an insufficient allowance for our own subjectivity. It's kind of a blind spot. So you seem biased, and you seem biased, but me, I'm right on target, true north. So we all have to start our analysis of perception with the idea of information being equivocal and a humble idea that the information allows for multiple interpretation, yet at the same time we don't make a sufficient allowance for our own subjectivity. Now, as a consequence, and what I really enjoyed about Professor Robinson's research was that as a consequence of this insufficient allowance, we tend to see others who perceive things differently than we see it ourselves as suffering from some intellectual or moral defect. You don't see that he only cares about getting reelected. You're stupid and immoral. You don't see that he's been doing the best he can with an evolving situation. You don't see that he's actually doing a good job with communicating. You're stupid and immoral. So we've got to, when it comes to human perceptions, recognize that information is equivocal. It allows for multiple interpretation. And we have a tendency not to realize that. And we therefore assume that others who see it differently are stupid and immoral. Now, when it comes to trying to navigate information and trying to improve our information processing, we have to recognize that perception is affected by the information itself, but it's also affected by our motivation. If I donated money to the red team, I'm going to see that this guy's doing a great job. The 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump, is doing a great job. If I donated money to the blue team, I'm going to say, look how horrible he is. So our own motivation, our interest will affect what we see. Now, I think what we have to do to manage that is start with a working assumption that we all care about human lives. We all care about the health and safety of our children. We all care about elderly people. We all deal with the challenges of isolation, the challenges of wearing masks and gloves and not being able to go out, being quarantined and social distancing. We have a lot in common right now. In fact, I would contend that we have a lot more in common in terms of what we care about and what we're experiencing than we have differences. This is an election year in the United States, and so we're about to embark on an election cycle, and my fear is that it's going to be pretty ugly. We're going to be pointing fingers and blaming and accusing each other, but I think we have to do that in a frame of we have a lot in common, a lot of common interests. So our different interests, our different motivation will affect what we see in different ways. We can try to offset that by recognizing the common interests that we have. Lastly, our experiences will affect what we see. If I've experienced racism, I'm more likely to see racism. If I've experienced, now as a white man, I haven't experienced racism, but I'm saying we have to realize past experiences affect what we see. Right now, we're not dealing with past experience. This is the first time any of us are dealing with a pandemic and social isolation, being quarantined and distancing and not being able to see our loved ones on holidays. It's disorienting, it's difficult, and it's new. if we unfortunately, and they say it's likely we will, face another pandemic situation in the future, we will learn from this experience and be better prepared, and it will affect what we see. So one of the issues that is important for us is to recognize that information is equivocal. Whatever we're looking at is a duck or a rabbit. That should keep us humble and stop us from the temptation of assuming that those who see a different side are stupid and immoral. A wise person once told me there are three sides to every story. There's my side, there's your side, and then there's the truth. What also we have to remember is our motivation will affect what we see. If I gave a lot of money to the blue team, this guy I'm going to look at differently from somebody who gave a lot of money to the red team. And then also our experiences. We've never experienced anything like this before, which affects what we see. And when we have experience, it will change how we see things. So perception is an important subject. And what we have to realize also is that if you are in a situation of leadership in your family or in your organization or in the nation, when you communicate, you have to remove that equivocality. How can I say I care? And how many different ways can I say it so that there's no doubt that somebody understands where my heart is and what's important?